Hello V Squad and welcome to another episode of V Girl TV. Yes guys, I am back with another video. To those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. To my old subscribers, you know I got nothing but love for you guys, so thank you as usual. So today I'm actually going to do this video. I'm actually in a better mood than I was in last week. I know the video, I haven't put out a video in 2 days, but to be very honest with you, I really didn't feel like it. I needed a break. I mean, I'm still emotional, but I'm not as emotional as I was last week, so I'm definitely in a better headspace to put out content. I decided to do this video because so many people, well, before I even get into the video, I just want to make this disclaimer, okay? I've been getting some flack, and can't even believe that I'm even addressing this, but I'm gonna just say this real quick. When I decided to make this channel, it had nothing, I didn't plan to make this channel a channel based on Panama. But a big part of my life is that I am black, I am Panamanian, but I'm also American. This is my life. When I was living in New York, I was very, very involved in the Panamanian community. Like, for God's sakes, my mother was like the president of the Panamanian community in Brooklyn. Everybody knew who my mother was. My parents also made sure that I knew my culture, my heritage. They made sure I knew where I came from. I also took the initiative to know where I come from too, by asking my ancestors questions, asking my parents questions, because if you don't know where you come from, you will not know where you're going. So I am a firm believer in that. I dance típico, I dance Congo. I know my culture, I know where I come from. So for those of you who feel like I should not be talking about your Panama, I'm gonna just say this, and this will be the last time that I'm gonna address this. If you feel that I should not be discussing your Panama, that is your opinion. But guess what? You don't have to look on the channel. You can close it out. You can go about your business. This is a platform for positivity. This is my life, past situation, present situations, and future situations. My experiences. And this is a disclaimer. I also want to make it very clear that I only have 10 minutes to put these things together, so please don't try to come for me. Thank you. Great. Okay, so now that we got that squared away and we realize that this is an atmosphere for positivity, I feel like now we can move forward. So the reason why I'm actually doing this video is because a lot of people, because of media and because of media representation, a lot of it has to do with past government. I will say a lot of it has to do with that. A lot of it has to do with just the way people were depicted. But we're just gonna move. We want to push it forward. Okay. So again, this is just for educational purposes. This is not to direct anything towards anyone or anything like that. This is for educational purposes only. So people think that there's no black people here in Panama. I think that people, besides the people in Brooklyn, because people in Brooklyn that grew up in Brooklyn, they always think that all Panamanians are black. But outside of those people, and if you go to other places or other states, they usually assume that Panamanian people do not, black Panamanians don't exist. They always assume that everyone in Panama is either mestizo, mixed, or fair skin. That may not be true. That's not 100% true, because black Panamanians make up 15% of the population here in Panama, and I think I'm part of that 15%, and so is my mom, and so is my dad, and so is my cousins, and saying, you get the picture. There are two types of black people here in Panama. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but when I explain it, it'll make sense as to why people mentally think, why people think the way that they think now. Okay, because this is deep. This goes back. So there were two types of black people here in Panama. You have the Afro Colonials and you have the Afro-Antilleans. These different groups of black Panamanian are both significantly important in Panamanian history, especially Black Panamanian history. So the Afro Colonials were Panamanians that came here, or well, they were brought here through slavery. One of the most historical stories that I've heard that I know of, and this is something that my father spoke to us about constantly all the time, and things that I've researched on my own, because this is not actually taught in schools. My son doesn't even know this because it's not taught in his school. I'm not going to say it's not taught in any schools. I'm just saying from my experience, disclaimer, my experience, in my son's school, this is not taught. There were a group of African slaves that were brought to Panama, and they were called the Cimarrones. They were enslaved Africans who escaped their Spanish slave masters during the 1500s, and the group allied with Sir Francis Drake of England to defeat the Spaniards, their Spanish masters. Actually defeated the Spanish and created their own civilization within themselves. He described them as Black people who ran away from their slave masters because they were treated cruelly and they were oppressed. So they were the first group of African people or African slaves that were brought here in Panama, or that was here in Panama, allegedly. Just gonna put that in there. So Black people in Panama can be found in the following areas. They can be found in Colón, can be found in Bocas del Toro City, in areas like Rio Abajo, and also what is known as the Canal Zone. The second group of Black Panamanians here in Panama are the Afro-Antilleanos. Some difference from the Afro Colonial is that the Afro-Antilleanos are descendants of West Indian people, and they migrated here to Panama either for the Panama Canal, to work on the Panama Canal, or they just migrated on their own. So that's the difference between the two. Now, yes, they were both, because we all are Black and we all are descendants of Africans. The only thing that stops us, or what's different from us, is one boat stop away where the slave ship just dropped us. Really thinking about it, we are both the same. You know, we are both the same. Okay, so I want you guys to keep in mind that the Panama Canal was built between 1904 and 1914. So there was a new wave of Black people or Black culture coming into Panama. Now, where it gets a little bit cloudy and where it gets a little bit fuzzy, and I think that this has, you can actually see how situations like this impacted colorism to this day, okay? Or prejudice within a society. So you can see how this affects, and I want you guys to pay attention to this, okay? So when the West Indians came to Panama to build a canal, you know, they were Black, obviously. So what happened was that they would group everyone together. So they would group the Afro Colonials and they'll group the Afro-Antilleanos into one group. Understandably so, because they were all Black. Now the difference is that the colonials, over time, they adapted the Hispanic culture or the Spanish way of living. This, I'm not going to say everybody, but for the vast majority, they adapted the Hispanic way of living, and they kind of like, I don't want to say turned their back on African culture, but they assimilated to the Spanish way of being. Their religion, i.e. Catholic, and this is something that happened normally when it comes to slaves, or when slaves were brought to wherever country they were brought to. It's just like the slaves in America, right? So you have these group of Africans brought to America to believe in Christianity. They weren't able to practice their African traditions any longer. They had to leave their language, which was whatever African dialect or African language that they spoke. They no longer was able to use that in America. So it's the same exact concept that was here in Panama. Eventually, they definitely had to leave their beliefs behind. They had to adapt to the way it was here in Panama. They had to adapt to the language, which was Spanish. And that's just the way it was. So it's understandable, right? So then you have this group of Black people that's coming from another country, you know, coming into Panama, and these group of West Indian people were very proud of where they came from, okay? They were proud of their Blackness, you know? They were happy to be Black. They embraced themselves as Black people and their African roots first. Keep in mind that the Panama Canal was built between 1904 and 1914. The influx of West Indian people were people that came from places like Jamaica, Trinidad, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Barbados. I hope I'm not missing anybody else. But the highest population of Caribbean people or West Indian people that came to Panama to build the canal was from Jamaica and Barbados. I can attest to that because that's where my lineage comes from. My lineage comes from Jamaica, so I can definitely attest to that. So I know that ain't no lies there, ain't no lies there, okay? Because the colonial black Panamanians was already here in Panama, when the West Indians arrived to Panama, it caused tension in between the two groups. The colonials did not like to be grouped in with the West Indians. Although they were still black people, one group spoke Spanish and the other group spoke English. So the ideology behind Panama, and this is still true up to this day, Panamanian identity was built on mestizos, people being mixed, a melting pot, everybody's mixed, i.e. shunning their African culture. And now this is not for everybody because here in Panama we still dance Congo. Congo is something that's very influential in society, and obviously everyone knows that Congo is African. Now, West Indians had a very strong sense of black consciousness and embraced their African aesthetics to the fullest. They believed that they were black before nationality. In doing so, West Indians rejected the idea of mestizos, and because of that, it resulted in rejection. So I'm going to tell you that this is 100% true. Remember my father telling me stories about when he was growing up, he would have these afros, and I seen him and my uncles with these huge afros in the 60s and the 70s. They were very proud, you know, of their afro. And my father used to tell me in his days, the cops would kidnap the guys with afros and shave their hair off. I mean, I know this is an uncomfortable thing to talk about, but this is something that he experienced firsthand. And he also said my uncle experienced it firsthand as well. So here's the deal, and I'm just gonna keep it very funky. And like I said, I understand why it's like this. I'm not faulting anybody for it, but this is why we have to get educated so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future and we don't go on teaching the next generation this nonsense, okay? When my father came to, when my father's Panamanian, my mother's Panamanian, they lived in Cologne. They had their own community within itself. I remember my grandmother not being able to speak Spanish, and my grandmother is a born Panamanian and could not speak Spanish. She would speak her Spanish, but it was very machucao, okay? Her Spanish was very, very machucao. And I would always ask her, Grandma, I don't understand, how are you Panamanian and you don't even speak Spanish? And the reason because of that is because my grandmother grew up amongst West Indians, and she would always say, I never had to speak Spanish, I went to English school. So there was no reason for her. They had to form their own school to teach themselves. They had their own community, so there was no reason for them to, well, they felt there was no reason for them to speak Spanish because they formed their own community. Now, this became a problem here in Panama because Panama passed a law stating that non-Spanish speaking blacks, which would be the West Indians, okay, the West Indians that came to Panama, they passed a law prohibiting non-Spanish speaking blacks from relocating to Panama. They also passed a law limiting West Indians from relocating or moving into Panama. Now, there was an article that was put out not too long ago, and this is a real article that was written here in Panama. I'm just gonna post it. So the article was written on Friday the 20, I think it's the 25th or the 28th, my eyes is not too good, of May 1948, okay? So 1948, we are in the year 2020. That was 72 years ago, okay? So that means that somebody that's 72 years old right now was alive when this thing was written. So it wasn't too long ago. So the title of the article is Los Chombos en las Escuelas Panameñas. Basically, for those of you who do not know what the word chumbo means, chumbo is the same word that's equivalent to Negro, okay? No, not Negro. You know, the N-word, okay? It's equivalent to that word. So it's a derogatory word. It was meant to be used as a derogatory word. I know people will argue with me and tell me that that's not a bad word anymore. That just depends on your personal opinion. If you feel like it's still derogatory to you, but I mean, now people are just using it out of cariño, like they say. I don't know, but in 1948 it was a derogatory term, and the term was used, and that's what they called non-Spanish speaking black people, i.e. West Indian people. They call them chumbos, okay? And to me, it makes all the sense why my generation of people, or my generation family members, they don't speak English. Even though they came from, or their families were English speakers, they don't speak English whatsoever anymore. In the article, it goes on to say that basically they're taking over the schools. It goes on to saying that the teachers, the Chumbo teachers, they need to be treated like the slaves that they are. It's disgusting, okay? It's extremely disgusting. As you can see, this is the article right here. I ain't making this up. I am not making this up, you guys, okay? If I'm lying, I am flying, okay? If I am lying, I am flying. But that's the article. But this is a real article, and this is what was posted in the newspaper 72 years ago. So if you were being discriminated against for speaking your native language, which is English, okay, and people shunned you, obviously when your kids go to school, they would not feel comfortable enough to speak English because they didn't want to be treated differently. So it became a situation where, and I see it happening, I've seen it happening even with my son. When he first came to Panama, he didn't want to speak English no more, and I was like, no, no, that's not gonna happen. It became a situation like, if you were embarrassed, if your parents were looked down upon because they didn't speak Spanish, or because that they were Chumbo, obviously the kids are gonna want to fit in. I had people my age telling me, oh, I don't speak that. Yo no hablo eso. Nosotros estamos en Panamá. And the sad thing about when they say that is that they don't realize how much of a disgrace that they're doing for themselves, because it has changed so much. And this is so crazy how the world works and how the world is like a revolving circle. Those same people who came from English speaking people, or English speaking families, or mothers and fathers that did not want to speak English, they're losing out on opportunities. So like, for instance, in my son's school, he's probably like the only Chumba in his class. He's the only one in his class. Majority of the kids that's in the class, they're fair skinned, they're more mestizos, like they like to call them mestizos, and they all know how to speak English. Every last one of them know how to speak English. Now my cousins that's either my age or maybe around my age group, none of them don't know how to speak English. Their parents know how to speak English. We know how to speak English, but they don't know how to speak English. And that's when you are doing yourself a disgrace, because now that they're older, they're trying to go back to school to learn how to speak English. It didn't make any sense. Now this is my thing, and this is how I feel. I feel that we're all one. But when the government imposes certain views, it kind of becomes a reflection of the society, and we start picking up those things and picking up those habits. Although we may not say that, okay, well, there's no racism, that doesn't exist, there's still colorism. Colorism still exists here. For instance, like, I don't know if you guys saw my last video, I made it clear that black men don't really find me attractive. Now, I'm not saying all black men don't find me attractive, but the vast majority of black men here in Panama, they're not checking for me, okay? And that's cool. Colorism is very well alive in the Hispanic community, okay? I don't even know, we could talk about it, but that's going to be in a whole nother video. And it all stems from the government. Now, these laws that they imposed on us, or on black people, especially the ones that were English speaking, nowadays English is so important. It's such an important language, as Spanish is also a very important language. But I think here in Panama, English is like a demand at this time. Like, learning how to speak English right now, or people that know how to speak English, is in high demand. And you don't realize that, now that you think about it, how much of a disgrace that, you know, you did for your kids, because now they don't even know how to speak English, and that was your main language. And now you have this other group, and their kids know how to speak English, and they get better chances at life. They have better opportunities at life because they know how to speak English. It's an unfortunate situation that now, because we wanted to allow our kids to fit in and to enforce these things onto our children, that now we put our kids behind, you know? And this is not for everyone at all. I'm just speaking about those who have last names like me. I'm talking about the Wilsons. I'm talking about, because let me tell y'all, I have run across so many people here in Panama that have the name Wilson, Johnson, James, not Lopez, not Gonzalez, none of those names, okay? They have straight up, like, you can tell that they come from English speaking backgrounds, and they will turn to you and say, no, bella, yo no hablo eso. No, yo no hablo eso. Yo no hablo, por favor, ni me hablen. Yo no sé nada de inglés. Yo no sé nada de inglés. They will look at you and tell you that, and you just be like, okay. Meanwhile, somebody else that comes in there, okay, looking like Maria Gonzalez will come out of nowhere and she will start talking to you in the best English ever, okay? So if you don't see something wrong with that, I don't know. Something ain't right. Something is not right, okay? My hope is that we can put these things, these views about English, chumbo, this, I'm hoping that we could put those views behind us and move forward to a better Panama, and for us to realize that we are all one. We are all black, and we just need to stick together. We get it. All lives matter. We get all lives matter, but right now, black people are the most oppressed group of people in society, and this is just not in America. This is globally. Black people are in the poorest neighborhoods. I'm not saying all black people, but majority of black people are in poor neighborhoods. Like I said, disclaimer, okay? Some of us are able to get out and do something positive and be in a better situation, but the ones that are oppressed are mostly black and brown people, and that's something that is globally. It's not only in the US it's happening in Panama, it's happening in Jamaica, it's happening in Brazil, it's happening all over, okay? And this is a time where we do not need separation. Colonial, Afro Colonial, Afro-Antilleanos, we don't need separation. We just need to be one at this point, so that we are better together than we are divided. Divided we fall, united we stand. So guys, if you like this video and if you feel what I'm saying, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. You guys have been lovely. I love you guys. That's all I gotta say. You guys have been supporting me from the time I even started this channel, and to see how much my channel has grown so far, it's literally all because of you guys, and I truly appreciate it. Again, when I started this channel, it wasn't even really for me to even discuss much about Panama, but it kind of just went that way because this is my life right now. And I'm sure if my life goes into another direction, it will be about that too. I don't make these videos to offend anyone. These are my stories and my truth, and I hope that you guys can understand that. With that being said, as always, peace and love.